This episode is brought to you by Indie Film Hustle TV, the world's first streaming service dedicated to filmmakers, screenwriters, and content creators. Learn more at indiefilmhustle.tv. So after Dark City, which is obviously did not do well at the box office for the reasons we spoke about, but yet still very well respected for the craft and the film, I know. I mean, and you please tell me if I'm wrong. I know a lot of other filmmakers respect it and were influenced by it. How did the town treat you after, having essentially a box office disappointment? And how long did it take you to get out of that? Because I always am fascinated with, you hear these stories of directors who
have gotten out of it.
Well, you've made a few movies since then, so obviously someone gave you.
I have made a few. Yeah,
you've made a couple.
Like to have made more. But,
yeah. But just out of curiosity, like how does the town treat you? Because I know after a big hit they treat you one way, and after a disappointment they treat you another way. I'm just curious, and I know obviously it's a different time period too. I was in the '90s, but just curious.
Yeah, a different mentality where people were willing to take chances, but only to a certain extent, And the only reason they took a chance on Dark City is because The Crow had been so successful. That's really how it works, You make one hit and theoretically you get the license to do something that pushes the envelope a little bit. Though I'd argue these days that's less and less likely because these days Hollywood have determined that original fantasy and science fiction just doesn't work, commercially speaking. And sadly, to a certain extent, when it comes to big budgets and the cinema release, the big screen release, they are probably right. It's sad that we're in that place, and it's sad that I think the superhero movies have put us in that place with the audiences. But there you go. That's it is what it is. So yes, you're absolutely right. I was courted after The Crow, and everyone was all the studios were calling me saying, we'll make anything that you want. And I had this thing, I already written Dark City. I'd actually written Dark City before The Crow. And I said, here's this script and this is what I want to do. And then they usually say, well, what else do you want to do? So I eventually found people and we went through quite a development process through various studios. Disney were on board at one stage and believe it or not. And then we ended up in we ended up in New Line and they were like, it was all about the casting, and Mike DeLuca and Bob Shea at New Line were like, we don't care what the casting is. You can have whoever you like as long as you support them with some names, So I got to cast Rufus Sewell, which was terrific because that's who I wanted to be in the film. And then after the film, of course, being such a disappointment, it was very hard to make the next one, so I went back to Sydney and made this film called Garage Days, a very low budget Aussie movie. I've got to say though that the Dark City has built a huge following over the years. It's often to rival The Crow as well, and it's the increasing rate of offers to do sequels or the big one is right now, because cinema is in such a poor state, is to do a TV version of like a series version of Dark City, which I've turned down several over the years, but more and more I'm thinking maybe that's a good idea, so that's quite a turnaround from a film that did bad box office. It's quite it's a great thing about. Look, I have, physical media to thank for that, as we all do, which allows a film to have a shelf life. It's not just about its opening weekend. And if you make particular kinds of films that are challenging, not the sort of the norm, the sort of slam dunk, then physical media has traditionally been a great support of that kind of long process of success process, and Dark City is a classic example of that. So many people over the years more people discover it, and it builds its fan base.
Well, I'll be first in line to see the Dark City series, so let us know when it's available. Because, and I think honestly, a series and if I may be so bold to say, a series with someone in your hands, you might have the budget and the freedom, especially with certain streaming services, to do what you want to do with hopefully not as much interference. Because I feel that, and we'll get into iRobot in a second, which kind of leads into that. I've always felt since I started following your work is that like you are obviously a very unique filmmaker. You have a very specific vision, specific stories you like to tell, but a lot of times they just don't leave you alone. And because of that, but they just don't leave you alone. Like, like Tim, I equate someone like Tim Burton, who has a very unique style that's very him. And, he built up a lot of credibility after Beetlejuice and then Batman. And then he started to be able to do his thing, and they left him alone for the most part. But you never got like really left alone. Like I would love to see you with a $200 million film where they walk away with an original concept and you just let the man do what he does.
I'd like to see me with that. I'd like to see me with that too. Just FYI.
Just for clarity, if anyone's listening with 200 million hot in their pocket, Alex would love. But I always felt that I'm like, my God.
Thank you for putting that message out too.
I'm putting it out there. Anyone, you'll take 175. Yeah. I think we can work with 175.
That's fine too. Hell, I'd take a lot less if they left me alone. I'd take way less.